Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Accelerate Your Performance podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Janet Pilcher, founder and president of Studer Education. In my years starting and working with Studer Education, one of the most referenced tactics in conversations is rounding. Rounding just seems to resonate with people. It's a simple tactic with profound impact. It's a way for leaders to identify what's working, what needs to be improved, what barriers are preventing people from doing their best work? One of my favorite benefits of rounding, though, is the power it holds for recognizing people for their good work and for identifying who is making a difference for others. Rounding and recognition are such a dynamic duo, and we encourage partners to use these two tactics together. To share how to do just that, we have a webinar coming up on June 9th at 11 o'clock Central Time. This webinar will share the value of rounding and recognition, how these two tactics work together, and a specific technology application that allows for easy implementation of rounding and recognition. Bill Adams, one of our outstanding Studer Education colleagues and coaches, will be leading this webinar. So in preparation for the webinar, I've invited Bill to the show today to talk about rounding and recognition. Bill is a Studer Education leader coach who brings the experiences of 34 years of leadership in public education. He has a passion for growing and developing leaders and has a track record of preparing others to serve in leadership roles. He understands that communication and cultural development are essential for implementing institutional strategic change. And he has been able to help schools and districts implement essential strategic initiatives, and while at the same time improving culture and climate. Bill was named the MetLife NASSP Kentucky Secondary Principal of the Year in 2012 for his leadership work at Meade County High School. Bill completed his career at the Meade County Central offices, where he served as the Associate Superintendent and Interim Superintendent. In addition, he worked in human resources and operational resources during his time at the Central office. Let me add that Bill is an incredibly genuine person. He cares for people and is quick to recognize them and highlight their contributions and value to an organization. These characteristics make him ideal to discuss and teach about recognition and rounding. They represent who he is and how he engages with people. So today I welcome Bill to the show. It's with great pleasure that I welcome one of our Studer Education coaches to our show today, Bill Adams. Bill, welcome.
Thank you.
So glad that you're here today, and you're going to do a webinar in June on rounding. And I know that you have taught people to round and you have great experience there. So let's start there, Bill. In your experience, why is rounding important, and why would an organization want to participate in rounding?
Well, thank you, Janet. There's a quote in your book, Hardwiring Excellence, that I use every time I talk about rounding, because for me, it really sets the stage for a real understanding of the power of rounding conversations. You wrote, before I really knew what rounding was, I thought I already rounded. And I find that most partners think that way as well. We already do this. And they may have relational conversations with their employees, but rounding goes so much deeper than that. Rounding has the power to transform an organization and to establish a real foundation built on deep and resilient culture in a way that increases employee engagement. And that's the foundation of our work that we do with partners. It's the foundation of organizational excellence. And I just think that all organizations want that.
And Bill, it's so true. Over the years, I think we've learned, as I've interviewed superintendents and executive leaders, I always say, 80% of the time where we're asking the question or not, they're referencing the work that they do with rounding. It's the power behind it, which is
Mm-hmm.
what you're speaking to. And it's intentional, right? I love what you
Yes.
said. It's
Yes.
intentional. It's not just, hey, how you doing, checking in, but it really has intentional questions around it. So I know you've worked with many partners who use rounding and the recognition component attached to that. So what have you seen to be the greatest benefits when people are using the tactic?
Well, there are many ways that rounding helps the organization, but I'd offer just two that I consistently see when I work with partners. The first would be voice and value. And when we look at the nationwide data concerning education, voice and value are usually the top items listed as things that are discouraging to educators. We don't have enough voice. We don't feel valued. And just like you, Janet, I'm passionate about education, and we can do something about increasing voice and value in every layer of our organizations. It takes time, but there really isn't a financial cost to doing this. Yet the gain is when employees feel valued and recognized in a way that helps them thrive in their work. The second important benefit would be increased leader awareness. We sometimes use this image of an iceberg in the ocean, and we see
Mhm.
this tiny bit peeking up above the water, but underneath there's this massive chunk of ice that goes unseen. And it's the same way in organizations. Leaders think that we see the complete picture, but oftentimes we don't. And when we build these trusting relationships with our people through rounding, they'll share things with us that increase our understanding of the organization as a whole. And if we're willing to act on that more informed understanding, we can improve by leaps and bounds.
I love that. And such a good way to define why we do it, how we look at that conceptually, and then how we apply that, Bill. I think that's as you're talking, I'm thinking of people are going to talk anyway.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
rounding gets them to talk to us and give us input and builds that trusting environment so that they can. I love, just getting underneath the iceberg and really understanding
Hmm.
that becomes essential. So let's just go a little bit deeper here. And rounding has an impact, rounding and the recognition component that attaches to that, has an impact on the culture of an organization. So,
Right.
so from your experience and what you've seen, speak to that a little bit.
So sometimes I'll tell my partners that culture is more than dress down Friday and free donuts.
I love it.
Real organizational culture is when every member of the team understands that there's this collective set of values and commitments that we all own. And when we show up every day and live into those values, there's just no limit to what we can achieve together. And rounding and recognition are specific strategies that reinforce this idea of real, deep, authentic culture. And the day-to-day grind, the challenges, the struggles, all of which are real. They are real. We
Sure.
understand that. But they chip away at culture. But rounding and recognition reinforce this strong culture.
Yeah. I love the word chipping away because when we're thinking about where people are, we're at the end of the year going into the new year, have a summer break a little bit before we do that. But times are not getting easier. So the
Right.
challenges continue to build and people feel those, don't they? I mean, they feel
They do.
everyone feels though. They really feel that. And as a leader, our job is really to help reduce the anxiety of those changes and those external factors. And I love what you're talking about is you're just chipping away at that and rounding is a tool
Hmm.
to do that. So let's talk more specifically. I know you are working with a number of partners and some of them probably stand out in your mind that, are models of the rounding and recognition practice. So talk a little bit about what they do.
Okay, well, I would share two
Okay.
for different reasons. First of all, Breckenridge County is a smaller school district in Kentucky, and they embraced rounding wholeheartedly early in our work together. And at that time, there was a real sense among the employees that they felt undervalued. And there was also a bit of we they, meaning the employees felt a bit disconnected from the leadership. And Superintendent Nick Carter, he didn't like that. And so he used rounding with every employee as a strategy and a way to learn why those things were happening. And then we worked with the leaders in that district to put an action plan together after they had listened to the employees. And I think they're a model because they implemented the tactic with fidelity and they just achieved fantastic results. My second partner that I would offer as an example would be Lake Zurich. They're one of my partners. They're north of Chicago and they're much larger. So they started small with rounding. And Superintendent Kelly Galt asked what I thought was a great question of her leaders when we began the process. She asked, "Who do you need to hear from? Let's identify specific groups of people who may be underrepresented." So then we had a great conversation about their teams, and with that information, they decided to use the K-12 rounding app to really hone in on targeted audiences that maybe had been underrepresented. I'll be with them at their summer retreat when we'll look at the data that we've collected from the K-12 rounding app, and we'll put together an action plan based on that data. And I think they're a model because they show how all organizations, regardless of their size, can scale these tactics in a way that makes sense and in a way that makes a difference.
Yeah, really good examples. And as you're talking about the rounding app, it's collecting that data. There are multiple sources of data that we have, and that app really does provide us with a
Mm,
great advantage of pulling that data in. It's narrative data. Sometimes we think of data as just numbers, right? But really,
mhm.
that's narrative data that has meaning, and you can build your actions plans, off of that. I bet it will be a fun opportunity to connect this summer, Bill.
I'm excited about that day.
Yeah, but I look forward to hearing more about it because that could be a
Mm,
best practice that we could transfer. So great for your partners. I got a chance to meet Nick last year at AASA and really enjoyed my conversation with him.
mhm.
So just as we close today, let's close with a little bit more about how rounding and recognition work together, because one of the things that rounding allows us to do, obviously, is to solve problems and build action off of that. But it also allows us to recognize people
Mm.
who others recognize. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, I would say that rounding and recognition just work together hand in hand. And so typically in rounding conversations, we'll ask employees to share things that are going well with them and people who have been helpful to them. And both of these questions just provide a beautiful opportunity for the leader to gain positive information about their teams. And if we're smart, we'll use that information to recognize people who are doing great work. People do great work all the time, and it's usually because they're just wired that way. They're not really looking for recognition. But when the leader has access to this information, and then when they follow through with recognizing others for their work, it's powerful and it's motivating. I think I heard you say once that employees who feel valued typically add value to their organization. And rounding just gives wonderful opportunities to include recognition on a regular basis in a way that just makes us stronger.
Absolutely. And we know there are bright spots and good things
Mm,
happening each and every day in our schools, and the work that our people are doing. And so, Bill, thank you so much for sharing a little bit about your perspective on rounding and some examples from your partners. Look forward to the webinar in June that you'll be leading. And so, thank you again for the work that you do, and just the person that you are, because when rounding is such a good topic for you, because it represents your care and concern for other
mm,
people,
mm.
and you're just that type of human. So thank you very much.
Thanks for your leadership, Janet.
As Bill said so well, rounding and recognition work together hand in hand. They are an effective and meaningful way to identify ways to improve and to spotlight the contributions being made by people. Good work is going on all around us. When we recognize this good work, it's repeated and it grows. People want to do good work. And when we recognize good work, People are even more motivated and know how their contributions make a difference. Rounding offers a way for people to recognize their peers, and in recognizing others, people grow to appreciate one another. The bottom line is that rounding and recognition build a positive workplace culture in which people know they matter. If you want to learn more about rounding and recognition, join us on June 9th at 11 o'clock Central Time for Bill's webinar. You can learn more about it at studereducation.com/webinars. We'll explore how to use rounding and recognition together to build a workplace culture in which people know they matter. This week, recognize and call out the good work happening around you. Show people they matter and watch the good work grow. Have a great week, everyone.